If you submitted FAFSA and your school is now asking for tax documents, worksheets, identity paperwork, or other records, you may have been selected for verification. Verification is a federal review process schools use to confirm certain FAFSA information before financial aid can be finalized. And while it can definitely feel stressful, being selected does not automatically mean something is wrong. It simply means your school is required to review certain parts of your file before aid can move forward. Students are selected for verification for different reasons. Sometimes selection is random through federal processing. Other times, FAFSA data needs clarification, tax information may not fully align, or the school identifies conflicting information that must be resolved before aid can continue. Even when tax information transfers directly through FAFSA, schools may still need additional documentation depending on what appears in the file. The goal is to make sure federal aid is accurate and awarded correctly. Verification is not the same for every student. When a FAFSA is selected, it is placed into a verification group, and that group determines what the school must review before aid can be finalized. The three groups families most commonly hear about are V1, V4, and V5. V1 is the most common verification group. This is considered standard verification and focuses on making sure the financial information reported on FAFSA is accurate. Schools may review adjusted gross income, taxes paid, income earned from work, and family size depending on what federal data is already available and what needs clarification. The reason V1 exists is because federal aid eligibility, especially Pell Grant eligibility, depends heavily on accurate financial data. If income or household information is incorrect, even unintentionally, aid can be awarded incorrectly. V4 focuses on identity verification. In this group, the school must confirm that the student is a real applicant and that the person receiving aid is actually the person connected to the FAFSA. This has become especially important because financial aid fraud has increased significantly in recent years, particularly involving stolen identities and fraudulent Pell Grant applications. The goal here is to protect federal aid programs and make sure funds are reaching legitimate students. V5 combines both of those reviews. That means the school must complete the financial review from V1 and the identity review from V4. Because both areas must be completed, V5 usually requires the most documentation and often takes longer if anything is missing. This group exists because the file has been selected for both financial accuracy and identity confirmation before aid can be released. Families often ask whether certain files are selected more often than others. While there is not one simple public formula, files with conflicting information, unusual income patterns, household data that does not align, or manually entered FAFSA information without strong federal matches can face closer review. Pell-eligible files also often receive more scrutiny because Pell eligibility is directly tied to federal grant dollars, so even small differences in data can matter. The exact documents requested during verification depend on the verification group and the information the school needs to review, but there are several documents that come up often. Common requests include tax return transcripts, W-2 forms, verification worksheets, proof of identity, non-tax filer documentation, and in some cases, signed statements related to educational purpose or identity confirmation. One of the most common areas where verification gets delayed is tax documentation, especially when the wrong form is submitted. Many schools ask for an IRS tax return transcript rather than a tax document pulled from personal records. Tax return transcripts can be downloaded directly through the Internal Revenue Service using the Get Transcript Tool online or requested by mail if online access is not available. One thing that often causes confusion is that the IRS offers several different transcript types. In most verification situations, the tax return transcript is the one schools are looking for because it reflects the tax return information that was actually filed. Other transcript types, such as account transcripts or wage and income transcripts, usually do not satisfy standard verification unless the school specifically requests them. Because every school can have slightly different requirements, it is always important to check exactly what your school is asking for before submitting anything. Some schools may also simply ask for a full signed copy of the tax return instead of a transcript. If that happens, it is important to submit the complete signed return, including all pages and any schedules that apply. Schedules matter because they often explain additional income sources such as self-employment income, rental income, or other tax situations that financial aid staff may need to review. A very common delay happens when only part of the return is submitted and important schedules are left out. It is also critical to submit tax documents for the correct year. FAFSA generally uses prior year tax information, which means the tax year used is usually 2 years back from the academic year being reviewed. For example, a 2026 to 27 FAFSA uses 2024 tax information. Submitting the wrong tax year is one of the simplest ways a file can get delayed. And signatures matter. If a paper tax return was self-prepared, it must include the taxpayer's signature in the correct signature area. If it was a joint return, both signatures may be required. If the return was prepared by a paid tax professional, the preparer section should include the preparer's signature and PTIN number. Missing signatures are one of the most common reasons tax documents are rejected during verification. The most important thing families can do is carefully review every requested item and submit complete documents the first time, because even one missing page, signature, or supporting document can stop the file from moving forward. Another area where families often experience delays involves non-tax filers. If a student, parent, or spouse did not file taxes, schools often still require documentation showing that filing was not required, along with proof of income earned from work such as W-2 forms. This usually means a non-tax filer statement or other documentation confirming how income was earned during the year being reviewed. One important issue is that some people believe they did not need to file a tax return when, based on their income, they actually were required to file. If income is above the IRS filing threshold, the school may require that a tax return first be filed and processed before financial aid can move forward. In those situations, final tax documentation usually needs to be submitted before the file can be completed. This is one reason financial aid offices sometimes ask follow-up questions, even when families feel they have already submitted everything requested. Another important thing to understand is that verification is usually not a quick process. Every school has its own staffing levels, volume of files, and internal processing timelines. Most schools process verification in date order, meaning files are generally reviewed based on when complete paperwork is received. That means the sooner all required documents are submitted correctly, the sooner the file can move forward. If paperwork is incomplete, missing signatures, or missing supporting documents, the file usually stops until corrections are made. This is why submitting complete documentation early is one of the best ways to avoid delays. The biggest mistakes families make during verification are usually simple, but they can create major delays. Submitting incomplete documents, sending the wrong tax year, leaving out schedules, missing signatures, or uploading the wrong form are all very common reasons files stop moving forward. Another frequent issue is overlooking school portal messages. Many schools communicate corrections or missing items directly through the student portal, so checking email alone may not always be enough. When in doubt, it is always better to ask the financial aid office exactly what is needed rather than assume a document will satisfy the requirement. A file that is complete the first time usually moves much faster than one that needs repeated corrections. If you were selected for verification, the most important thing to remember is that this process is very common and usually manageable once you understand what the school is asking for. Carefully review every requested item, submit complete documents as early as possible, and ask questions if anything is unclear. Verification can feel frustrating, but once requirements are complete, your school can continue finalizing your financial aid. If this video helped, please like, subscribe, and follow along, because I'll continue breaking down financial aid topics in a way that's practical and easy to understand. And if you want help understanding other financial aid issues that often delay, reduce, or change aid, I've linked my free financial aid survival guide below. Thank you for watching, keep moving toward that degree, and I'll see you soon.